Okay, so the next part of my backhoe project is going to be mounting this frame that I made onto my tractor. I already removed the 3-point linkages and everything. I removed the fenders because they were in the way and they were junk anyway. I'm going to replace them eventually with some other fenders I have. But anyway, I got it blocked up on these buckets to roughly estimate where it's going to go. And on the lower end, how I'm going to mount it, there's these pieces of channel here, the yellow pieces, that mount the loader. So I'm going to have a piece of this kind of angle iron, this 4" by 4" by 3/8 angle iron. It's going to be bolted onto here, and it's going to come over right about here somewhere, and it's going to get welded on. And up here at the very top I'm going to have an ear, and attached to that ear will be a bar that will go down somewhere on the loader arm over there, and there will be another ear on that arm for the bar to attach to. So there'll be a pin at this end and a pin at this end. Okay, so we're in the shop and I got 2 pieces of the angle iron cut, 16 inches as it turned out. And I made a scribe mark there, marking 8.5 inches, and the rest is underneath this bracket piece, and the 2 are going to be bolted together. I briefly considered welding these together because it would be a little bit easier, but if I welded this onto here and then this onto my frame, I couldn't remove it. I could unbolt this from the tractor, but then my loader wouldn't be attached to the tractor. So I want to have the option of taking the backhoe off if I need to for whatever reason, so I'm going to bolt this. There's one existing hole which I'm going to use. I put a scribe through there and made a mark. And then there's 2 other holes that I already punched. There's a hole there and there. I'm going to use 3 bolts, 1/2 inch diameter, grade 8 bolts. Okay, so I got the holes drilled in the piece of angle iron. As you can see, one hole lines up with that hole that's in this orange or yellow piece. But I have to transfer the holes from this piece of angle iron onto this bracket. I've got it all lined up and clamped down the way I want it. And I want to show you guys a tool. Some of you may be familiar with it, but if you're not, you really got to get yourself a set of these if you like fabrication and you're making stuff like this in your own shop. This is called a transfer punch. Super sweet. It's just straight diameter with a little tit in the center, and they come in a whole set like that, all different sizes. And what it's for is for transferring the location of one hole onto another part. So that fits in there perfectly, and when I strike it with a hammer, just that center little tit will make a mark right on center on the piece below it. So I bolted the brackets that I made back onto the tractor, like so. The angle iron is bolted. You can see there with 3 1/2 inch grade 8 bolts bolted onto that piece of U-shaped channel, and that's bolted back onto the axle. And here's the frame that I made, and I have it blocked up on some buckets and some shims and such, and I am currently just aligning everything one step at a time, making sure it's good this way and then up and down and every which way, and then I'll tack it together with my welder. Okay, now with the frame tack welded into place on these horizontal pieces, I'm going to fabricate an upper mount that's going to go from here to right about there on this cross member for the loader. Here's the pieces that I'm going to use to make the upper ears. Consists of a piece of angle iron, the same 4" angle iron that I made the rest of the frame out of, and then just a piece of plate. This is all 3/8 inch thick material. It's going to be welded on like so, and these are 1 inch diameter holes. I have some nice round stock I found in the scrap bin at work, so I'm going to use that for pins. And then once this piece is welded onto the angle iron, I'm going to weld the angle iron onto the upper part of the frame, and then I'll make the lower ears. Okay, so I have the upper mounts all welded together. See, I put in some angled gussets there to strengthen everything. Also, a side note, when I welded this, to make sure these holes were aligned and that I wouldn't have any problem fitting the pin in there, I put the pin in there to get everything aligned, and I also used the triangle magnets over here where these gussets are to make sure everything got nice and square, and they came out pretty well. So these will be welded right about there, and then now it's time to work on the front mounts. I made these two pieces here for the front mount, and you can see how they're attached. And you see I have the piece of pin material in here to keep everything aligned. I started off by welding on this piece here. I ran the bar through it, put this piece on, tack welded it at either end, not on the side. And the reason I did that is because if I tacked it here first and then on the inside, firstly it would be hard to get inside there. And on top of that, when I run that bead there, when it's cooling off, it's going to shrink and it's going to pull this piece of metal outwards, and it's going to get it out of alignment, and it may even bind up this pin a little bit. Now, if I were to weld here and then weld in there, the shrinkage will probably even itself out, but I prefer to do this first. So I welded on my ears onto the loader, and I got to looking at it and I just didn't think it was quite strong enough, because there's going to be a lot of force on these ears, the lower ones and the upper ones, because all the weight of the backhoe is going to be hanging off it and pulling on that. So in an attempt to make it stronger, I made these reinforcements, just a 1/4 inch by 1.25 inch flat stock, bent it to fit the little angle there. I just tacked them on, and I'm going to weld them all around. So my thought is, as the support rod is going to be pulling this way, these pieces will just help hold it down. And also on the back side, this back piece is a lot better secured because it's welded all the way around there. But I made this one support piece here because, again, this is going to be pulling this way, so I wanted a piece right here to pull back. And hopefully it works well, and if it doesn't, if it cracks or something in the future, I'll just weld some more on there. So I just finished welding everything up. You can see I added some angle supports there so it's more sturdy. Got some there. Got one underneath. Everything's all welded up. So I'm going to wire brush everything, wire wheel everything, and hit it with some Caterpillar yellow paint. So now the last step is to make those brackets to go from those two mounting ears I made. Well, I got a coat of primer on the frame here and on these ears, and while the paint's drying between coats, I'm going to make the last piece I need to fabricate, which is the bar that goes from this ear to the ear up there. So the way I decided to make them, I'm using 3" by 3" by 1/2 inch thick pieces of angle iron, and I just cut the first one here. I'm going to cut it like that, and this piece, as you can imagine, is going to fit into the ear. But I thought something that thin, only a 1/2 inch thick, it would eventually wear out the pin that's going to go through. So the piece that I cut out nice and square, and it's right here, and this is going to get welded on the inside like that. So now my hole, once it's lined up and welded, is essentially going to be 1 inch thick rather than a 1/2 inch, and I think that'll help reduce wear a little bit. What's going to go in between these are these turnbuckles that I got from McMaster Car. They're 3/4 inch thick turnbuckles. They're rated to hold, I think, 5,500 pounds apiece of tensile strength. So I think they'll be strong enough. And the reason I wanted to put turnbuckles in here is because I wasn't able to super accurately measure the distance from that hole to that hole and get a bar, a connecting bar, the right length. And even if I did, the way this mounts onto the axle, that has some play, and then this piece here mounts kind of loosely with a loose bolt onto this piece, so this piece has some play. So that's going to effectively change the length between, or the distance between that hole and this hole. And I wanted this upper bar to be really tight, because as the backhoe's on here, it's going to want to pull this down, and I didn't want too much stress on those lower mounting pieces, because I didn't want these welds to be broken and bent. So I wanted to be able to put a bar in here and tighten that bar and take all the backlash out of it. So those pieces are all welded on. So now you see it's a lot thicker than it was before. So now I'm going to weld the turnbuckles on just like I have it set up here. Well, it's all done. I got these two top link bars all in place. They went together a little bit harder than I expected because I didn't have this ear perfectly aligned with that ear there. Actually, you can see a slight bow, maybe, but nothing I can really do about it now. I also had to trim a little bit more because this was interfering and the brake pedal was interfering. I also bent that brake pedal rod with a torch too because it was still kind of getting in the way. It's kind of annoying, but whatever, I made it fit. All these pins are in place. I just have to slide some cotter pins in there and we're all set. And that concludes the frame portion of this build. So, as always, thanks for watching. Leave a comment, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Let me know what you think. And thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.